So hello everybody. I'm not gonna lie, but when I found out that I was going to be speaking right after Sally, I was like, awesome, this is gonna be good. Thank you for that, Chris. And then as she was actually doing her presentation and she was talking about that moment that she realized that she didn't want to be fascinating, I'm like, please don't let that be today for me. Like, seriously, really don't want that to be today in front of all of this group. So let's hope that doesn't happen. But yes, I'm going to be talking to you guys about a little bit about trust. So what better place to start with trust than in kindergarten, right? That was before we kind of got introduced to the real world. So most people think that I'm kidding when I say that you can actually take several of the principles that you learned in kindergarten and apply them to your public relations efforts. So today we're going to take 9 of the principles from Robert Fulcom's book, Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten, and apply them to our public relations efforts in our marketing. So principle number 1, when you go out into the world, watch out for traffic, hold hands, and stick together. Pretty basic, right? But if you think about it, you need a plan. You wouldn't start building a house without a plan, right? So when you go out in the world, have a plan, be prepared. Get your marketing plan together, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Also, stick together. I like that part a lot, and when we're talking about trust, I think that's very important. Building relationships with the media is crucial to your public relations efforts. You have those relationships already built. They're much more likely to give you the press coverage that you need to get your public relations efforts right off the ground. Also, what about each other? Right? Today is a great way for you to build and maintain. I think that's one of the biggest things that we tend to forget about our relationships is maintaining them. It's nice to meet all of these wonderful people that are sitting next to you in the audience, but actually maintaining that relationship. You never know when your fellow marketing professionals might be able to help you in the future. So it's extremely important to build and maintain those relationships. And then the most important part, of course, building relationships with your target markets. So finding out who they are, building that relationship, and then again, maintaining it. So building marketing plan, I think we're all very familiar with this. It's a 4-step process. This is not rocket science. This is like marketing 101 that we learned. Number 1, do your research. I can't stress the importance of research, knowing who your target market is and knowing how to go about reaching them. And we'll talk a lot about research later. Also, figure out what your objectives are. What are we trying to accomplish here? We know who we're trying to get to, but what are we trying to do? What are we trying to sell? What message are we trying to get out there to our public? Programming, and then of course evaluation. One thing I did want to touch on when we talk about our target market, I recently was at a conference and someone brought up a really important point that I had not heard anyone mention really, and that is the census. We just had a new census come out, right? How many of you have actually had a chance to look through that? Not very many. How important is it for us to know who we're talking to and where they are, right? That was the whole point of his message, is using this information because our whole United States of America has changed entirely in the last 10 years. Our demographics are different, where they're living, where they're moving to, where they're building businesses, all of this is changing. So looking into that data to find out how our messages need to change, how we're getting our message out there, and then what we're saying in our message. So principle number 2, remember the first word you learned from those Dick and Jane books, look. Again, it seems pretty simple, but I cannot tell you how many people overlook the importance of research. I fully believe that there is not one question out there that you can't find the answer to just by asking the right people and asking the right questions. Research is not expensive. It's another thing that kills me. This is not the majority of your marketing budget, right? There are a lot of other things that you're going to be doing with your money that's going to be a lot more expensive. Research is pretty cost effective. You don't spend a ton on it, but it is so crucial to the effectiveness of your plan. There are a dozen things that you can use to get this happening. You can do focus groups. One of sorry guys, not used to having that there. One of my favorite research methods is focus groups, just because I'm able to interact with people. I'm typically at my desk doing surveys, survey analysis, writing surveys. So to actually have a group of people that I can ask the question directly to and then even probe further, I love that. And we're going to talk more about focus groups in a second. Secret shopping, how easy is that? It's super cheap and it's super easy. Just walk in or send one of your friends, your mom, your sister, your brother. Send them in. What do they find? What are your customers seeing each time they come in? And then, of course, like I said, the e-surveys. I think we're all pretty familiar with that. So a SWOT analysis, the basic first thing that you should ever do when you're starting your research. How many of you do SWOT analysis on, say, an annual basis of your company and clients? Okay, a good bit of you. What about 6 months, every 6 months? Fewer. What about every quarter? Very fewer. Okay, we need to start doing that more often. Things are changing constantly, right? The political climate is changing, the environmental climate is changing, and of course the economic climate is changing. Doing it once a year is not being effective. Everything is changing. What you set aside and you decide that you're going to do at the beginning in January, the beginning of the year, is going to be completely different once you go into July. At Insight, we tend to do our SWOT analysis on our own company at least once a quarter. One of the last SWOT analyses that we conducted on ourselves, we found out some really valuable information on how to market ourselves as a company. What we found is the owner of Insight was really smart. She didn't hire people to fill positions. She actually made positions for the people that she came in contact with, which is a very smart way to build your business, because what you end up coming from that is you have a team of people who are really good at what they do. Right? They're not mediocre at it. They're really good because you made a whole position just for that person because they were that good at what they were doing. So what we discovered is you had myself, who's really good at research. I'm very good at market plan development, survey analysis, that sort of thing. Do not ask me to do any kind of graphics, okay? Because it would be embarrassing for all of us. It would look like I was still in kindergarten if I did something like that, I assure you. Even when I'm trying to give the information that I received during a creative brief to our graphic designer, it's laughable. Like she just, every once in a while, once I tried to actually draw what I thought the web page should look like, the home page, and she just walked away, actually. Like that was just it. It was like, okay, well, anyway, I'll just call the client myself because clearly you aren't understanding what you're trying to do. So, but the point is, she built our company around people who were really good at what they did. So what we finally discovered is that literally you could hire an entire marketing department and pay the price of one person, right? You're not having to pay me a salary when you hire our agency to work for you when I'm not doing research. I go in, I do my thing, I pass it on to the graphic designer, they do their thing, that's it. I'm done, and you're not having to pay me. So instead of paying 5 separate people, you were paying 1, and you were getting the expertise of 5 people who really knew what they were doing. E-surveys. So we are all very familiar with e-surveys. We've filled out several of these. I am sure you probably get them on a daily basis. You get bombarded by these. Now, for your purposes, they are cost effective, right? It's super cheap. You're not having to pay to print it up. You're not having to pay postage or anything. It's easy for your respondents to respond to. All they have to do is click a couple buttons and send it back to you, and they're done. Some things to keep in mind, however, is number one, keep it short. I think we have all been there, myself just a few days ago, because of course I always take surveys because that's what I do. So if someone sends me a survey, I have to take it. I will totally close out the window if 30 minutes later I'm still taking your survey. It's ridiculous. And especially when there's no warning. You know, they don't tell you, oh, by the way, this is going to take the next hour of your time and you might win a $100 gift card. Okay, they don't say that at the beginning. They just have you start taking it. So number one, keep it short. Number two, tell them how long it's going to take. If it's going to take 5 minutes, let them know it's going to take 5 minutes, and then stick to it. If it's going to take 10, let it take 10, but stick to it. Don't go beyond that time frame. Also, always ask demographic questions last. Even if it is a short survey, by the end of the survey, people are just choosing answers, right? They're not really putting a lot of thought into it. Ask your most important questions, the information that you really need to know first. The demographic questions aren't things that people have to think about. I mean, I hope they don't have to think about their age and their income and male or female and those sort of things. So always keep those to the end. Also, any questions about sexual orientation and income. Those are hot buttons, and people are uncomfortable usually answering those questions. If you don't have to use them, don't. I do use income quite a bit. Again, it's usually toward the end of the survey. It's usually actually the last question that I ask, and I never make it a required question, like where they had to answer it or they can't continue the survey. A 12 to 15% response rate is reliable. This is what I use whenever I send out surveys. If you have 12 to 15% of the people that you sent the survey out to actually send it back to you, you can feel like those results are actually reliable. You can make a marketing plan from that. Anything less than that, I certainly wouldn't be comfortable making a whole marketing plan on that information and then having my clients spend money on it. It's not very reliable information. So focus groups, like I said, this is one of my favorite things because with surveys, I can ask you guys questions, but then when I get the answers back, and I'm like, wow, I didn't see that coming, I have no way of asking you about it, right? I can't follow up these questions. Focus groups are easy and quick to assemble. Basically, you can just ask like 10 people to come together, offer to feed them. People are very motivated by food, I'm finding. Just give them lunch, and they'll tell you whatever you want. It's instant access to your information. Again, you don't have to wait for them to send a survey back. It's right there for you. And again, you can probe even further into the information, the answers that you got. It provides you a direct contact to your clients. This is a huge, great, wonderful PR move on your part because you are telling them that you care. You care enough to take time out of your day, not to fill out a survey and send it out and email it to people, but to make it personal, right? You have taken the time to gather them together, and their opinion matters. Their opinion matters. Do you like this? Do you not like this? Why do you like this? It makes people feel important. It makes them trust your brand, right? Also, it gives you more detailed data than a survey. I love statistics, and I'm a big numbers person, but at the same time, getting the why behind the what is super important too. This way you can, usually when I mediate a focus group, I go in with 4 questions. That's it. For an hour-long conversation, I go with 4 questions, and everything just kind of comes. It just starts coming out. It's a great way to pre-test a program or project and to post-test it. Find out how it worked. A lot of times, it's also a great way to get your big idea from a focus group. That happens several times with me. I'll go in and I'll have 3 ideas that I want to test on them. None of them end up being the idea I go with. They end up creating it for me just through our conversation and through our dialogue. Principle number 3, say you're sorry when you hurt somebody. Again, it seems pretty simple, but how many times have we seen this happen out in the marketplace where they didn't say they were sorry. They screwed up pretty bad, but they didn't say they were sorry. Number 1, just apologize for it. Just own up to it, right? You made a mistake, whatever it was, own up to it. Second of all, obviously fix the problem. Let's not just leave it there to fester. And then learn from it. If you don't learn from your mistakes, you are bound to do them over and over again. You're wasting your own time. And then move on, right? Don't hold on to it. Let's move past it. Let's go on. Social media is a great way for you to do this. A lot of companies are finding this, and I'm talking big companies. Southwest Airlines is a great example of this. They are rated #1 airlines with customer satisfaction. This is why. They have a huge social media department that takes care of this stuff, that is constantly monitoring what's being said about them online all the time. And the minute that you say anything even slightly negative, they take care of it. They address it, they take care of it, they fix it, and they move on. Principle number 4, play fair. So operate by the golden rule, right? Treat people the way that you want to be treated. You never know when you're going to run into these people again. Now, I understand that you guys are in a much larger market than what I'm from Panama City, Florida, so it's very small there. You will probably run into those people, and it will probably be tomorrow in Publix, I'm not going to lie. Now, with you guys, you have a little bit larger market, but still, don't risk it, right? You never know how someone's going to impact your life in the future. There's no reason to burn a bridge. I've got some great examples, and I'm afraid I don't have too much time to give them, but I'll try really quick to give one. We have a bakery that had a bakery that we used for all of our events, and anything that we put on, we had this bakery that we would always go to. And one day, one of my colleagues was there actually to pick up an order for an event that we were about to have, and the UPS guy came in through the front door, And the owner of this bakery flipped out on him. Like, she was screaming at him, I told you not to come through the front door while business hours were open. I mean, just humiliating the poor guy. Which, by the way, for myself, that would have been enough reason for me not to ever shop with her again or use her business ever. Just because I don't think you should treat people like that. Add one more thing on that. My colleague that was there, that UPS guy, was actually her husband. Needless to say, we did not use that bakery again. So you just never know. So be careful. Treat people like you want to be treated. Principle number 5, don't hit people. If you have to slam your competition and can't sell a product or a service on its own merits, you probably need to find something else to sell, right? We're about to go into the political campaigning. I don't know if you guys are as excited as I am. And that's all we're going to hear, right? It gets old really quick. Now, that being said, I think most of us remember the Mac versus PC commercials back in 2006, 2007, right? It was done in a light-hearted, funny way. It raised Apple's market share 42%. Principle number 6, clean up your own mess. You know, being from the Florida Gulf Coast, I would really like to discuss BP in detail with this one. I won't, but be proactive. They weren't. Don't play the blame game. They did. Their first press release was that. Be more self-aware when you're in the midst of a disaster. Clearly, their CEO had no idea what he looked like on TV because he looked arrogant. He looked like he didn't care. It didn't bother him at all. So hopefully we have all learned from that principle. Principle number 7, don't take things that aren't yours. Don't plagiarize, right? It's pretty simple. To be inspired is one thing, but to actually steal someone's idea is a whole other. I also teach at Florida State University, and actually Wednesday night's class was all about the legal issues that have to do with our business. So just like I said, this is something that hopefully we don't have a problem with anyway. Principle number 8, be aware of wonder. Sally talks a lot about creativity, and creativity is a process. Most of us, I think, understand that, right? Don't stifle it, let it just flow. Try to remember back when you were in kindergarten and M&Ms were just amazing to you. Like, that was the best part of your day, and you didn't have a mortgage payment. Like, how great was that, right? Principle number 9, live a balanced life, learn, dance, sing, draw, and play. So this has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about today, but I think it's something that we all need to be reminded of frequently, especially in these kind of gatherings. We talk a lot about business, but it's important to keep this in mind, right? Keep an open mind, enjoy your life. And finally, your secret weapon is public relations, right? Use it. If you are not using PR right now, you need to integrate that into your marketing plan. It makes a difference. It builds the trust with your, not only with your fellow marketing practitioners, but also with your clients. And that is all I have. Thank you so much, guys.